Okay, you've been given your topic. You have your umbrella topic. You met with your group the other day and you started to try to figure out ways to narrow down your rather large umbrella topic. So you got group 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 here. And in order to complete this next assignment, which is the preliminary research assignment, where I want you to narrow down a topic and then try and come up with a research question, you need to do a little bit of research. So what I want you to do first, before you get to this particular assignment that is downloadable on this particular page, I want you to do just a little bit of research. So what you're going to do here, let's say that you are in this group right here with relationships, gender, and sexuality. I've given you a number of keywords here. So gender and respect, roles, concerns, healthy, unhealthy relationships, young adult sexuality, college and relationships and sexuality, etc. So I want you to take some of these keywords and I want you to pop over to Google. Better yet, if you pop over to Google Scholar, which you can find if you just do a Google search. And I want you to type in one of those keywords. And that should give you some sort of an article here where you can just kind of browse around. Okay, the idea is for you to start generating some ideas here to figure out how you might narrow down your topic from this really, really broad umbrella topic to something that might be doable. So do that with a little bit of a Google Scholar search. Take about 10 minutes to do that. Okay, you might pause your this video right now and do that. Okay, now you're going to come back to this handout right here, which again, there's a link where you can download that. If you have not done that, you should do that right now. This is something that I don't care how you do this. You could print this off and you can handwrite on it. That's fine. You should also be able to type right on the document, as there are a number of text boxes within that doc for you to be able to do that. And you'll see squares instead of rectangles instead of circles on your document here. Okay, so let's do part 1 and I'll show you what I've done here. Here I've got part 1, so you can see there are the rectangles here, not the circles. So I'm taking my own topic here, my own broad topic, because I don't want to show you how to do it for your topic. So I just did a generic one here on education. And so you're going to write in this box right here your topic, the big umbrella topic that you've already been given. So this one should be easy. And then based on your reading, your own interests, anything that you talked about with your group, can you narrow that topic down a little bit more? So think about maybe this massive book about education. What would be a chapter in that book? And maybe a chapter in that book would be on virtual learning. And maybe another chapter in that massive book would be about bridge programs. Okay, and so write down those two topics that are a little bit more narrow than just this broad topic of education, or in your case, this broad topic of gender, sexuality, or any of the other topics that you might have been given. Then can you narrow this down a little bit more? So think about virtual learning, as there's a book maybe that's been written about virtual learning. What might be one of the chapters in that book? And see if you can narrow it down even more. So one thing I thought about is, can I narrow it to a topic that is specific to me? Maybe something at the University of Michigan, maybe something about 2020 in light of our current situation, maybe that relates to the pandemic, or maybe relates to politics today, or being a freshman at the University of Michigan. And it could be anything. Okay, so maybe I narrow down virtual learning to a more specific topic, like the educational viability of virtual learning during the pandemic for U of M students. Okay, or maybe I narrow it down to the impact of virtual learning on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Okay, those are now some specific topics that I might be able to tackle. If I go with the bridge program, bridge programs, I could narrow that down a little bit. Maybe I narrow it down to the Comprehensive Studies program at the University of Michigan, and I want to look into its impact on graduation and success rates. I might look at bridge programs in the past, and so maybe I look at affirmative action, that program's positive or negative impact on educational equity, and whether that might be something that should be brought back. Okay, so I want you to try and narrow that down. Why don't you pause your video right now and do that part first. Okay, presumably you've come up with 4 narrowed topics, and we're at the beginning stages. These could still be molded and made a little bit more specific as your research progresses. But I'd like you to select one of these 4 that you have written on your page. And so that's what you're going to put in this slot right here. What's the narrowed focus that you're most interested in tackling? And it should be one that you're really interested in. And the exercise today is going to see if it actually is something that is doable. Okay, so what I did is I said, I like this one right here, the impact of virtual learning on DEI initiatives. So I took that as the one I'm going to try and focus on at this point. Okay, and then if I go to the bottom of this page here, I'm going to narrow my research hypothesis. I'm going to come up with a hypothesis or a research question. And so an example of that is right here where it says, I'd like to examine whether or not sleep-deprived people will perform worse on tests than those individuals who are not sleep-deprived. That's an example of a hypothesis, a research hypothesis. So I had to construct one for this topic right here, the impact of virtual learning on DEI initiatives. And these are usually done with whether or not statements. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at whether or not virtual learning, and that might be blended learning or fully remote learning, has an adverse effect on a university's goal of a robust, diverse, and inclusive learning environment. Okay, and I'm not exactly sure where this is going. That's part of the research question, is I want to go into this with an open mind. I'm not sure whether virtual learning is a good thing or a bad thing for DEI education. Okay, so that's what I'm going to take a look at. Okay, what I want you to do right now, pick one of those 4, write that into this slot right here, and see if you can write a whether or not statement here that will serve as at least your preliminary research hypothesis. Do that right now. Pause the video. Okay, now we're going to move from our tentative hypothesis to a revised hypothesis. And what we're really going to end up doing here is we're going to find out whether or not the topic that you've chosen is viable, whether it's going to be a real pain in the butt for you to do research on this, or whether this is something that's doable. Okay, so this is the kind of process you should do for any kind of research-related topic or assignment. It'll save you a lot of time if you do some of this preliminary research. So the first thing that you should do is list some keywords or phrases that you could use in a keyword search on your topic. Okay, so I put in here DEI. I looked that up. I did a little bit of just a random Google search here and looked for other terms that fit into this. So synonyms for this might be multicultural education, virtual learning or remote learning. Another synonym that I came across was anti-racist education. I saw in an article that they used the term systemic racism or intercultural learning. And so I'm getting all of those kinds of synonyms for this kind of education, so I can do keyword searches in different ways so I don't get to a dead end. So 5 keywords right now. See if you can do that right now in that slot. You can pause the video. Okay, step 2 here is that you're going to use 1 or 2 of these keywords to look up an actual article. See if you can find an article that relates somewhat to your topic. Now, it's not necessarily going to relate directly to your topic, but it might relate to one part of your topic. And so you're going to look for those kinds of things. So use these keywords, phrases, or subjects to locate a full text source through Google Scholar. Okay? And so you would go back to Google Scholar and type in one of those keywords here and see if you can find a scholarly article on this topic or on something that relates to that topic. Okay? You might be writing, we hope, writing something brand new. And so there might not be an article that is exactly what you're going to do. We hope not, because then you're just repeating someone else. You're looking for things that relate to it in some way, shape, or form. Okay? When you find that article, read it, skim it, take a look. Is it something that's usable? Okay? For the purposes here, you should write down the MLA source information here. If you need to go to the Purdue OWL website to take a look at how that is written out, you should do that. Often there is a citation tool right on the database. You could click on that and then just paste it right in here. Okay? And then I want you to do that again for a second source. You'll do that and so you're going to find two sources that might be usable for this big assignment. Okay? If you look through those things and read those two articles, that also gets us to step 4, where while you're reading those two articles, you should be listing ideas that you're coming up with that might be things that you could use to organize your discussion later on when you start writing this, or examples that you might use within your within whatever you're going to end up writing at the end. Or they might be more keywords for you to look into some other sources. So while you're reading these two sources, just list potential areas of discussion within this topic. So maybe main points that you'd write about, or examples that you came across, cases if there are court cases, or specific instances in different towns and in different schools, etc., etc. And it says here, please try and list at least 10 bullet points. And so I've done some of them here, where I've got other keywords like distance education programs. I want to look into this distance learning task force, which did some studies on this topic. Then I saw some things about gender and that men are more likely to choose virtual learning over women. And then I saw some things in one of these two articles about how income and personal income play a significant role in people choosing and succeeding to do virtual learning. And obviously that plays a role in equity. Things that have to do with access, I found some things like that. So I just listed a bunch of things here. This should be full, and you're not allowed to write etc., etc., etc. like I did. Okay? So go ahead and do that right now. Okay, and the last step is this revised hypothesis. You had an original hypothesis up here, whether or not virtual learning has an adverse effect on a university's goal of a robust, diverse, and inclusive learning environment. Now, after reading a couple of sources and brainstorming, you've got a couple of ways to go here. Number one, you might say, oh my gosh, this topic is a nightmare. This is not going to work. In which case, you go back to this page right here and you choose something else. You've got 3 other choices. Okay? But at this point, I hope you have seen some possible avenues that you can take with this. And at this point, I want you to try and revise that hypothesis. Can you narrow it just a little bit more, make it a little bit clearer? But it's still a whether or not question. You still need to do some research here. So you can see right here, I've tried to simplify it a little bit. So my research question is whether or not a university's remote learning programs initiated in response to the global pandemic, the one right now, adversely affects marginalized students, deepening the cultural divide. So that's what I came up with. I'm going to take a look at how this remote learning might have an effect on groups that tend to be marginalized in our society, and how that might have an effect on their education. So that might be the avenue that I'm going to take. Obviously, I have a lot of research left to do, but this gets me started, and that's the goal of this preliminary research assignment. Okay, if you have questions, let me know, and I'm hoping that helped you get through the assignment.